This is a podcast from the Samplecast, Volume 2, Episode 59.
The Samplecast.
Hello, welcome to the show. It's Ruben here. I hope you didn't miss me too much last week. I was so crazy busy. I didn't have a chance to put together either the podcast or the video show on YouTube, so please forgive me for that. In situations like that, I will still be sending out the news, bargains and freebies via the Samplecast newsletter. If you haven't signed up for the newsletter, do so. It's definitely worth it. I send out a newsletter every week, but it's especially important on the weeks when I don't have a full show together. To get hold of that, you can go to thesamplecast.com/newsletter and just sign up. I don't spam people. I don't send more than one newsletter a week normally. And I also include other stuff sometimes on there that hasn't made it into the proper show, either because of time constraints or because things have come to me a little bit late. So do sign up for that newsletter. I don't think you'll regret it. That brings us on to the podcast, and for some reason the podcast numbers shot up massively last week. I've no idea why. Maybe somebody posted it somewhere where a lot of people saw it, but there's hundreds more people listening now, so hello to all the new listeners. Do please stick with me and check out the Samplecast website if you haven't done so already. You can have a look there at what's on the podcast, what's on the YouTube show that goes hand in hand with this audio broadcast. So hello, thank you for joining me. If you like what you're hearing, please do head over to the Samplecast on iTunes and give us a rating and review. Anyway, enough promotion for now. Let's get on with this week's show. For this week, we have got a pretty packed show. There's lots of freebies, bargains, we've got a developer update. There's also a focus on a new developer, somebody who's just come out within the last week or so with some fantastic libraries. I'll be coming on to that later on in the show. Our big review this week is Collision Effects from Yeti, another new developer, and I'll be giving that the once over later on in the show. But for the time being, let's get on with this week's news.
Roundup.
So first up, Paths 2 from Audio Modern. Now this is the follow-up to the original Paths instrument from them, a company that are really making a name for themselves in the field of sound design tools. I really like the stuff that they're producing. Paths 2 has over a gigabyte of content, and the loops run in the full version of Contact, as well as being compatible with Apple loops, acidized WAVs, Rex and refill formats. The sounds have a feel of kind of cinematic electronica. There's some underscoring tones in there. You've also got some melodic phrases, and there are 25 construction kits in total. Each of these contains 6 different loops which work together, or of course you can rip them apart, mix and match them as well. They did send Paths 2 to me for a play, and I really had fun with it, creating some lovely cues with just a bit of tweaking and playing a few notes. So I definitely recommend it. Worth having a look at the Audio Modern website. Maximus by Cinetools is a brand new collection of design sounds geared towards trailer production and action scoring. It's 5.5 gigabytes in size, split into categories such as Brahms, rumbles, whooshes, rises, drum loops, hits and more. You should know the deal with this kind of collection by now, and to be honest I thought I did as well, but these are some of the most ear-splitting and hardest hitting sounds I've heard in quite some time. They really do rival Sample Tracks and Audio Imperia in their outright offensiveness, and I say offensiveness in a good way. That's definitely a good thing for this type of library. So you should take a look at the link in the show notes for Maximus. A quick mention for this weird little library of mutated office sounds. It's Cube by Soundiron, and it's a glitchy, crunchy collection of percussive sounds for the full version of Contact 5.5.2 and above. This library is split into 4 categories. You've got designed processed kits, acoustic raw sounds, effects that don't kind of fit into any defined category, and they've also developed some ambiences which have been produced from these raw sounds as well. It's a small collection, just 260 megabytes, but the demos are wide-ranging in style, so I reckon it could be a useful little oddity to add to your arsenal. Do check it out now at the Soundiron website. Mode Audio have had quite a few releases since I last covered them in the show, and the latest is Eclipse. You've got drones, ambiences, sound effects and textures, and these are all for dark scoring. The pack is just over a gig in size. There's 110 WAV samples here, and they sent it to me for a play, and I really like the tones on offer, and especially appreciated that the samples are quite long. They're all between 40 and 50 seconds mostly, but some are over a minute and a half long, so that's long enough for a quick cue in itself. Do check out the pack for yourself at the Mode Audio website. Lastly, I'll finish off with a library that I briefly covered in last week's Samplecast newsletter, but it's such a great offering that I had to give it another quick shout out. This is Momentum by Impact Soundworks, and the introductory pricing is ending very soon, so do jump on this if you fancy a look. This is a rhythmic collection of 2,500 performances for Contact, runs in the full version 5.5.2 and above, and Impact Soundworks have sampled here over 100 different types of instruments and kits, both tonal ones and unpitched percussion as well. All of the loops here are provided as WAVs, and the Contact engine that they've developed for the front end of this library is brand new with loads of options on board. This is the perfect kind of thing for filling out your cues, adding rhythmic drive with subtle shifting percussion, a lot of that kind of modern TV scoring. You're going to hear these sounds. Do check it out now at the Impact Soundworks website.
Bargain VST.
Get your bargains here. This is the section of the show for good deals, and the first is 80% off the guitar bundle from Acoustic Samples. This is available via VST Buzz, and it's 3 fantastic acoustic guitar libraries. Do bear in mind that these run in UVI player, not Contact. So you get the Sunbird guitar, a GD6 and the Telematic V3, which all have similar engines for picking, strumming and song building. These guitars are pretty realistic sounding, and at 20 gigabytes in size you get a lot for your money. And for your money it's 80% off, so it'd be rude not to take a look. Do check it out at €79. The details are on the link via the show notes. This one's a bit of a tongue twister. It's Int Synth from Clev Grand. I hope I've got that right. This is a little polyphonic synth plugin, and it's currently at 60% off over at Plugin Boutique. It's got 70 different presets, a legato mode and various LFO functions. The interface is really kind of minimalistic and pretty cool looking, so if you're a collector of synth plugins and modules at £7.50, you should probably jump on this. Do check the show notes for more details. A final very quick mention for this bundle from Precision Sound is 82% off 10 different instruments, and there's only a few days left to pick this up, so do get over to the Audio Plugin Deals website if you fancy it. The company approached me to do the video for this bundle and sent me all the instruments to play with, so I can vouch personally that they're all pretty good. I especially did like the strings and whistles. I found them to be very playable. Everything here runs in the full version of Contact. It's 11 gigabytes in total size, and even if you've not heard of Precision Sound, I'd advise taking a look, as it's currently 82% off, just $99. Do click the link in the show notes if you'd like to have a gander.
free VST.
Good freebies this week, so here's the information. And first off, I want to say that Versilian Studios have 2 new products out this week. Ethereal wins Harps 2 and Strumstick. You can find out more about those 2 at the Versilian Studios website. Spoiler alert, they're both pretty good. However, for this free VST section of the show, I'm going to be looking at the previous version of Ethereal Wins Harp, which you can now download for free as a VST, audio unit plugin, or as a sound font file with raw WAV samples. It's a chromatically sampled 34-string lever harp with 2 velocity layers and 2 round robins on each note. And as a bonus, it also includes a few effects and vocal phrases from the full library that's just been released. I downloaded it for nothing, had a play, and it's really lovely. Do check it out at the link in the show notes. Last week I mentioned in the newsletter that J Minor Music had a new contact library out called Nuke Fallout. What I failed to spot, however, looking at his website, is that there's a rather nice freebie there as well called Iron and Rust. It runs in the full version of Contact 5, is 1.3 gigabytes in size, and has 150 presets on board in a wide range of different styles. So you've got hits, pads, stingers and effects, all in an engine with a built-in arpeggiator and an effects section as well. Do head on over to the J Minor Music website to download it for absolutely nothing.
The Big Review.
This week's big review is Collision Effects by Sound Yeti, who are a brand new company. Now, I know this show has been stuffed to the gills with cinematic scoring toolkits already, but since Sound Yeti's new Collision Effects is such a good looking piece of software, I had to give it a deeper look in this week's review. This is a sample library for Contact with almost 15 gigabytes of samples. It comprises 3,100 different sound sources and has a huge number of NKI files. It's 234 different NKI patches. It's pretty big. It's also worth mentioning it does run in the free Contact player and is NKS compatible as well for complete control and machine hardware. This is actually their very first product from Sound Yeti, and they've obviously gone all out to impress with a large library encompassing lots of styles, a fancy looking interface design and a fully animated control feature. So can the sounds match up to the looks? Let's find out. The main interface has 4 pages. The first has got controls for destruction, shimmer, depth, reversing, pitch controls and ADSR as well. The second page has various static effects. You'll be used to that kind of thing on a Kontakt interface. The third page has effects that can be assigned to envelope, LFO and sequencer automation. And the final page has convolution reverb settings. There's actually 190 different reverbs which you can play with, which is a very large amount. The interface is pretty easy to understand. I found it pretty straightforward despite the large number of controls. The third page here had me really interested. The animated envelope and LFO graphics did seem a little bit like a gimmick at first, but actually these animations I found really helpful in showing the shapes that affect the different effects modules and how they work. This is very clever stuff. The controls on the first page of the interface for destruction and such like, they have additional sliders underneath for fine-tuning the sound, something I appreciated, another nice touch I thought. I also did like the reverse button, especially when I was auditioning long samples with huge attack times, things like risers and sirens. Then I could just reverse that patch and hear what the ending of the sample sounded like without having to sit and play through each one all the way through. Let's come on to the sounds themselves. Now, although they're not the very best cinematic effects I've ever heard in my life, they're far from the worst. They're pretty great all in all. They're nice and functional, they've got a good range of frequencies covered, some have a very nice sense of space as well, and there's some nice depth and surround effects going on with a few of those samples. However, I do have some complaints about the library, and these complaints are quite significant. So my problems are mainly to do with auditioning and browsing through the sounds. The first thing that struck me about the library was the sheer number of different NKI files to juggle with. So I started with the FX themes patches and worked my way through the other ones. This took ages to go through everything. It's made even more frustrating by the fact that there aren't any WAV files to just quickly dip into and speed through. This wouldn't matter so much if the engine made it easier to audition the sounds, but it really doesn't. Some patches like Asylum Trailer Hits 1 have almost logically laid out mapping with a hit on 2 keys. Now that's a good example of one of their patches. However, the mapping extends well beyond the range of a normal 88 key keyboard, which I do find annoying. You have to jump up and down octaves just to hear everything on offer. Some other patches fare less well and have mapping that is much more unpredictable. I'll give as an example Deep Heart Bass Hit, which has some sounds mapped over 3 octaves and other sounds mapped over just 1. There's no real telling of where they're going to be unless you play through. So that meant that for every one of the hundreds of NKI files, to hear all of the sounds, I either had to play up or down the entire keyboard, including the 2 octaves above and below the normal range, or I had to open the mapping window to see how the NKI was mapped, just in case some great sounds were hiding and I didn't come across them. Now this is really unacceptable and makes finding the perfect sound, of which Collision Effects has hundreds of great sounds, far more hassle than it needs to be. So that is the bottom line, and how usable this library is for you really depends on what type of composer you are. For me, a wealth of great sounds and a brilliant interface have been ruined by illogical mapping decisions, and that's a shame, as I was ready to be 100% on board with this library. These issues for me are deal breakers, and I won't necessarily be reaching for Collision Effects when I need a quick and easy effects solution. However, some people will be more than happy to delve in, exploring all of the sounds, and they'll have the time to do so. Just I don't have the time to do that. So for more information on Sound Yeti and Collision Effects, do head to their website.
Developer update.
There's one big update to a couple of products this week, and by a whisker I missed out on covering it in the last show. It's iZotope, Ozone 8 and Neutron 2. These updates have been out for a week or so, and the feedback online has been extraordinarily good. Now, it doesn't seem like too long ago that the previous iterations of these products were released, but I can see why they've updated the products as they now work together, sharing parameters with one another to help you improve your mix. The new tonal balance control is the big selling point here. This bridges the gap between mixing and mastering as it lets each of the plugins see what the other is doing, and it will suggest solutions to fix your mix. And there are a few more features too, such as the Master Assistant, which will analyse a reference track to help you get close to it, and there's new visual mixing aids and spectral shaping modes as well. This gives you more options for analysing and correcting problem frequencies. I've had such a manic week this week that even though I've got download codes for these two, I've yet to give them a try, but I have used Ozone for many years and I pretty much love it. It appears on every track in the mastering chain, and I'm looking forward to auditioning these new updates to see if they're all they're cracked up to be.
Unknown Gem.
This week's Unknown Gem is a whole company. Now, a few times on the show, I've had to announce a sample library company closing down, and they seem to be dropping faster and faster at the moment. It's a very competitive industry out there. But this week, there's some good news as there's a brand new company opening up, and I think they deserve a special mention. They're called Sample Hero, which I think is a great name, and they launched a few days ago. I checked out their site and they have a lot of packs on there already. In fact, a surprisingly large number of packs, which makes me think that the head honcho Dan Brown Jr., not that one from the crappy books, he's obviously been working behind the scenes for a long time to get these products ready. And at the moment there are sample packs and contact libraries on the site, and they're all pretty small and not very expensive neither. Most of these libraries are quite niche, and actually I think the specific nature of them and their bargain price point might just be what some people are looking for to get them out of a hole for specific projects. I had a look through the products, and the highlights for me are the risers, the chimes, and the vocal chant library called Hey, which did impress me. Now, these are things which I've been personally looking for over the last few months, so it's nice to see them pop up as kind of bespoke libraries. Sample Hero's company motto is insanely simple, incredibly musical, and I think that pretty much sums them up and what they're all about. They haven't sponsored this section of the show. I just came across the company this week and I thought they deserve a little bit of a shout out because they've obviously put the legwork in and have some interesting products. Do check them out at the Sample Hero website. Thank you so much for tuning in and downloading the show. Don't forget about the Samplecast YouTube show. It's basically the same as the podcast, but cut down a little bit, but you can see all of the products in action. You can see all their interfaces and graphics and a little bit of fun stuff added into that show as well. If you've seen this week's show, you'll know what I'm talking about. To all the new listeners, thank you again for joining me. I do hope you get something out of the show. And get in touch if you like what you hear. You can grab me on email, thesamplecast@gmail.com. You can get hold of me on Twitter @thesamplecast, or me personally @Reutunes, REUTUNES. Or you can go via the website, send us a message. You know how to do it by now. I'm sure you're all internet savvy enough to download a podcast, so you're definitely able to send me an email or two. Next week will probably be a newsletter again, but the week after will be our 60th show, and I'm trying to get something special lined up for it, but we'll see how we do. In the meantime, thanks again for listening. Bye bye now.